Hello and welcome back everyone. So in this video we're going to talk about context. So I'll go to the scripting workspace here, and like we've seen already before, context is about the state of the application. But context also gets a little more tricky depending on what's happening in Blender. So specifically, if an event happens inside of the 3D view, there'll be extra things added to the context that's related to the 3D view. And likewise, there's other things for each area that could be added. Like for the node editor, there's other properties that get added there, like the active node. But I'll just show you some stuff. So, it's bpy.context. That's what we're looking at here. And then there's convenience variable. You just type capital C, same thing. So I'll do capital C dot, and then let's look at something. So if we say, I'll show you what I mean by specific to certain areas first. So I'll say C dot area. That will show us the area, which is going to be, this um, Python interactive console. If I said c.area.type, you'll see it says console. Now, if I said c.area, you can actually hit dot and see all these properties. But if I got the height value, so height, it says 458. If I change this, so now it's 358, which, that was kind of not intentional that I did that so perfectly, but dot height 475. But we don't know how to get the height of this window, this area or this one. So it gets a little more tricky. You have to loop over the different data structures. So I'll get into that, but let me show you one more thing. Just like I'm saying now that it depends on what area you're in, context will change. Like in this case, context just changed to the console and said 475 was the height, but the height of the text is higher. The text editor is much higher. It's probably triple that. Um, so given that information, what do you have at your disposal at all times? Because if you hit C and then dot, some of this stuff will always be available to you, and that's called the global context. And if you go over to the API, so Blender 5 API here, okay, and I'm going to scroll down to context right here, bpy.context, and you see there's global context. Says these properties are available in any context. Now, we just saw area, okay, and area returns back the area type, and that's like the 3D view, the text editor, the outliner, those are areas. But the area's value, okay, was console in the case where we were typing it in right here. So we were, executing some stuff right here. So the area dot type is console. Now, every area or every part of Blender that you access will have an area associated to it. So operations happen per area, but they all have this property area when you read context, even though area will change depending where things are basically popping off at. So that's area, okay? I'm not going to go like through all of this. It's the same idea for everything. So there's various global context attributes, like properties that you can access from from anywhere. They might change depending where they're coming from. Like the mode, that is probably going to be the same no matter what. It's just going to be this 3D view mode right here. Like if you go to edit mode and you go down here and you do c.mode, it's edit mesh. Okay, if you went to say sculpting mode and did it, c.mode sculpt, even if I executed that over here, it would still give us this same result. So I'm executing this in the console down here, but it still says sculpt mode. Okay, it's like there's only, Blender has like certain things that are globally the same everywhere, no matter what area things are happening in. So one of those is mode. Scene is going to be the same thing. You're not going to be in the text editor, and that makes the scene change. You got to think like how things might be constructed. So if I'm in the console and I say c.scene, well, the console doesn't have its own scene. It's just this right here. It's at the very top. It's a high level thing, right? So is the mode that you're in. It controls a lot of things that are going on inside of Blender. So the higher up the object is, wherever you reference those higher up objects, those things are probably going to be the same everywhere when you try to reference them. Now, little details like c.area, when we're looking at the area, that's more fine fine-grained data. You know, that's more fine-grained stuff, and it kind of starts to belong to certain areas only. It gets more exclusive the smaller the detail gets. But what I was going to say with that is, if you wanted to actually get, say, the height of this right here, get this out of the way. Say you wanted to get the height of this. Well, what is a higher level object that you can reference and then basically, you know, drill down into this area right here? Well, the window itself. This window, I was trying to collapse everything in the background. It wasn't working. So anyway, this is the Blender window. You can get it from right here. So c.window, right there it is. And so you can go to the higher level object and then go down and find different things inside of it. So we'll say c.window dot, and then we can do, I think it would be screens. So c.window dot screen, and that's scripting, and then dot areas. All right, so that's all the areas. You can put a list slice right there to make it basically force it to show you everything. And there's all the different areas. It's still not really telling you what you're looking at exactly, but so what we can do is just say for area, say for area in, and then we'll just loop over the different areas. We'll say area.type, and just, you don't have to print or nothing when you're in the interactive console like this. If it doesn't capture whatever you're typing into a variable, it will just print it out to the console, like, or print it out right here in a new line. So we didn't have to like say print area.type or anything. It just didn't capture it, so it just kind of passes through and then just lands right here. You know, think of it like that if you like, but that's what's happening essentially. Okay, so we're looking for text editor. So what we're going to do is say, I'm just going to hit up on the arrow key, hit enter, hit down on the arrow key. But before I hit enter, I'm going to say if area.type is equal to, and I'll just paste that in there, text editor, then I can say area.height. And there it is. So if we were to say minimize this, well, I don't need to minimize it. What I'll do is just split this and change this to something else so we don't hit text editor 2 times. So I'll go right here like this, area.height 595. And I think I don't need to prove this any further, but you know, there you go, 290. Okay, I'll join that back down. So that's basically some of the stuff that, you know, that's just one of the ideas there. Now there's things like operators, you know, like when you move an object. We haven't talked about operators. We'll talk about that next in the next video, but this operator has a context. So wherever operators run, you know, if I hit new right here, that's an operator. That operator created this text file, this empty text file. The context of that operator is the text editor. You know, so that's how things get more specific. Like if I go in here to edit mode and hit K for the knife tool, well, the context of this is the 3D viewport. Okay, so all the stuff that's in context is going to be related to the 3D viewport. Now you still have the global context, but just know that there's various ways to get to different areas of Blender, but generally whatever operation is running in that area, the context is going to be related to that. And when you go to the Python, you know, console here, or the Python documentation, you have that global context like we're saying, but there's buttons context, you know, there's a file context, node context, just like I was saying, like selected node. So if you're in the node editor and you have an operator that runs in the node editor, well, then you'll have selected nodes, you'll have active node, you'll have all these different things that will show up in the context. Okay, so selected nodes, if I go back to Blender and look at this, if I do bpy.context, I could just type C, but if I did selected nodes, it doesn't know, it doesn't recognize it. Okay, selected nodes, it's not there. But if I was if I had an operator running in like geometry nodes, say like, you know, if I had an operator in here, something, right? I drop that node to here, or you know, if I hit F is an operator that puts the frame around a node. These operators have that property in them though. So and I'll show you how to actually get all that later, but just be aware of that. And another thing too, you can't modify this. So bpy.context.area, you can't go in here and say bpy.context.area equals, something else. Not it, right? It ain't gonna work. This stuff is read only. Everything in context is read only. So the context member is available in area. Somewhere in here it says read only. Oh yeah, well they all have read only right next to it. But you can adjust things, okay, that update this. So let's say we were in object mode here, so I'll just clear this console real quick. So if I said bpy.context.mode, okay, it's object. I'll just say, I'll say if, and then let me just copy this. So I'll say if bpy.context.mode is equal to object, we can say bpy.ops, that's for the operations, and .ops.object.mode set, and we'll set the mode to edit like that. All right, and it switched to edit mode. You can see right here. Now we're in edit mode. And if I went and looked at bpy.context again, it'd be dot, and then we can say mode, and now it says edit mesh. So just know that you can't directly modify context stuff, but you can use it to see what you can get from it, like the active object or whatever. It's the state of the application, but then you can get objects from it, react to it, modify those objects, and then if you go back and look at context, whatever you've been doing might actually have changed what's in there. All right, and to finish up, I'll just give you a few tips here. Now, we'll talk about active object and what it is. So it's c.activeObject. The active object is the object that is selected that is yellow. Okay. Now objects don't even have to be selected to be active actually. If I capture a reference to this, so obj equals c.activeObject like that. So I have the reference to that object. So obj, right there it is. But if I was to say, select this light right here, okay, and that light is selected and active. If I said c.active object right now, you see it's set to light, but I still have a reference to that cube object, so remember that. Now what I'm going to do is set that cube to the active object, so it's going to be under the view layer. So c.viewLayer, the view layer is this right up here. That keeps a reference to what is selected, and all these different restriction toggles and stuff. All that's in the view layer. So c.viewLayer, and we're going to say .objects.select or active, and then we're going to assign it to obj. Okay, so the cube is not selected, but it is active. So if we said obj.select get, and just, I didn't mean to put that in there, select get like this, it says it's false, it's not selected. But if we look at c.activeObject, it is the cube. Okay, so just know that the active object is not, it doesn't mean that it's selected. Okay, but what the active object is really useful for is when you have multiple selections. So I'm holding shift. If I shift click this cube, well, there's 3 objects that are selected, but the cube is the active one. And that's useful for when you do Control P and parent things to the cube, or when you're doing parenting or something like that, or you have a selection set of some sort. Like say I'm going to delete the light and the camera. Say I had 3 of these cubes, right? And so I could come down here and say c.selected editable objects like that. That's the 3 there. But I could figure out which one is the active one, so I could say c.activeObject, and something else is like, so I have the selected editable objects, which is the 3. I have the active object. Okay, now I can see if in the selection set is that active object. So I'll just go, let's just say c.activeObject in c.selected editable objects true. So that way you could know how to set things up. You could check, is the active object in the selected editable objects? If it is, okay, well I have the correct selection set. Now I can run, say, an operator that I've made that parents things to the active object. Another little tip here is you could, filter things out. So I could say, let's have a curve in here, or a couple Bezier curves like this. So let's look at this selected editable objects. The curves are editable objects. So how could I filter out just to have the meshes or the curves in there? Well, I could use list comprehension. That's one way. So I'll just say, let's just create the list comprehension here. So I'll do like this. There's our list. We're going to say, we're going to keep the obj. So obj for obj in selected editable object if obj.type is equal to mesh. And there you go. That will filter out everything else that is not a mesh and give you a list of the mesh objects. So that's just another tip there. Now I could do this all day, but I think you get the idea. You just work with context to get selection sets, to check things, make sure things are in the right state, to make sure that, you know, the right scene is showing the right objects. It's basically the foundation to doing things in Blender, to reacting to things, to reacting to users, whatever they have selected and stuff. So when you're scripting in here, just keep that in mind, that you use the context to react to things, essentially, to check things, to get references, and then you use bpy.data to create the objects, to create the data, and then you use operators for, well, you can combine all that to make an operator.